everybody! If you listen to Chapter 1 of Mr. Popper's Penguins, hopefully you're coming back and you're ready for Chapter 2. So Chapter 2, The Voice in the Air. That evening, when the little Poppers had been put to bed, Mr. Popper and Mrs. Popper settled down for a long, quiet evening. The neat living room at 432 Proudfoot Avenue was much like all the other living rooms in Stillwater, except that on the walls were hung pictures from National Geographic magazine. Mrs. Popper picked up her sewing while Mr. Popper collected his pipe, his book, and his globe. From time to time, Mrs. Popper sighed a little as she thought about the long winter ahead. Would there really be enough beans to last, she wondered? Mr. Popper was not worried, however. As he put on his glasses, he was quite pleased at the prospect of a whole winter of reading travel books with no work to interrupt him. He set his little globe beside him and began to read. "What are you reading?" asked Mrs. Popper. "I am reading a book called Antarctic Adventures. It is very interesting. It tells all about the different people who have gone to the South Pole and what they have found there." "Don't you ever get tired of reading about the South Pole?" asked Mrs. Popper. "No, I don't. But of course I would much rather go there than read about it. But reading is the next best thing for adventures." "I think it must be very boring down there," said Mrs. Popper. "It sounds very dull and cold with all that ice and snow." "Oh, no," answered Mr. Popper. "You wouldn't think it was dull if you had gone with me to see the movie about the Drake expedition last year." "Well, I didn't, and I don't think any of us will have any money for movies now," said Mrs. Popper, a little sharply. She was not usually a disagreeable woman, but sometimes she got rather cross when she was worried about things. "If you had gone with me, my love," went Mr. Popper, "you would have seen how beautiful the Antarctic is. But I think the nicest part of all is the penguins." No wonder all the men on that expedition had such a good time playing with them. They are the funniest birds in the world. They don't fly like other birds. They walk upright like little men. When they get tired of walking, they just lie down on their stomachs and slide. It would be very nice to have one for a pet. "Pets!" exclaimed Mrs. Popper. "First it's Bill wanting a dog, and then Janie begging for a kitten. Now you and your penguins. But I won't have any pets around. They make too much dirt in the house, and I have enough work now trying to keep this place clean, to say nothing of what it costs to feed a pet. Anyway, we do have a bowl of goldfish." "Penguins are very intelligent," continued Mr. Popper. "Listen to this, Mama. It says here that when they want to catch some shrimp, they all crowd over to the edge of the ice bank. Only they don't all just jump in, because a sea leopard might be waiting to eat the penguins. So they crowd and they push until they manage to shove one penguin off to see if it's safe. I mean, if he doesn't get eaten up, then the rest of them know it's safe to jump right in." "Dear me," said Mrs. Popper. "They seem like pretty nasty birds." "It's an odd thing," said Mr. Popper, "that all polar bears live in the North Pole and all penguins live at the South Pole. I should think penguins would like the North Pole too, if only they knew how to get there." At 10 o'clock, Mrs. Popper yawned and put down her sewing. "Well, you could go on reading about these nasty birds, but I'm going to bed. Tomorrow is Thursday, September 30th, and I have to go to the first meeting of the Ladies' Aid and Missionary Society." "September 30th?" said Mr. Popper in an exciting tone. "You don't mean that tonight is Wednesday, September 29th? "Why, yes, I suppose it is," said Mrs. Popper. "But what of it?" Mr. Popper quickly put down his book of Antarctic Adventures and moved quickly to the radio. "What of it?" he repeated. "Why, this is the night that the Drake Antarctic Expedition is going to start broadcasting on the radio." "Oh, that's nothing," said Mrs. Popper. "Just a lot of men at the bottom of the world saying, 'Hello, Mama. Hello, Papa.'" "Shh!" said Mr. Popper, laying his ear close to the radio. There was a buzz and a crackling sound, and then suddenly, from the South Pole, a faint voice floated into the Poppers' living room. "Hello, this is Admiral Drake speaking." "Hello, Mama." "Hello, Papa." "Hello, Mr. Popper." "Gracious goodness!" exclaimed Mrs. Popper. "Did he just say Papa or Popper?" "Hello, Mr. Popper, up there in Stillwater," the voice said again. "Thank you for your nice letter about the pictures from our last expedition. Watch for an answer, Mr. Popper, but not by letter, Mr. Popper. Watch for a surprise. Signing off, signing off." "You wrote to Admiral Drake?" said Mrs. Popper. "Yes, I did," Mr. Popper admitted. "I wrote and told him how funny I thought the penguins were." "Well, I never," said Mrs. Popper, but she was very impressed. Mr. Popper picked up his little globe and he found the Antarctic. "And to think he spoke to me all the way from there, and he mentioned me by name, Mama. What do you suppose he means by a surprise?" "I haven't any idea," said Mrs. Popper, "but I'm going to bed. I don't want to be late for the Ladies' Aid and Missionary Society meeting tomorrow." And that's the end of Chapter 2. Chapter 3 coming next.